Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sports Psych Show. Today I'm speaking with Aaron O'Connell. Aaron, welcome to the Sports Psych Show.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's a pleasure. I've been following your show for such a long time on my trips to Cork, so I never thought I would be here, but thank you for inviting me.
Well, no, I'm delighted to have you on, and we met not long ago at a conference in Ireland, in Dublin, that I was speaking at, and we got chatting in one of the intervals, and I was fascinated to hear your coaching story, your sports psychology story. So, look, why don't we get started by getting you to introduce yourself to the Sports Psych Show audience, talk to us about your background, what you're doing now, what you're coaching, and interest in sports psychology.
So my professional background, I would class myself originally as being a business entrepreneur. I had a successful manufacturing business, selling window blinds. I sold it a number of years ago, was an advocate for window blind safety for a number of years. Was invited by the European Commission to write standards on window blind safety when prevent children from being strangled. My coaching background, I'm coaching basketball for over 30 years. Love it. Presently coaching Meteor's ladies under 17 team, who would have been under 16 last year. We're currently the national champions at under 16. We won that and 3 other trophies last year. I coach under 12 county side development girls, which is cool. So I'm getting in at the foundation end. I've coached at all levels of basketball. But I see myself as a continuous learner. I'm always looking to improve, so much so that I'm actually I'm starting a master's in applied coaching in UL in 2 weeks' time, next month. I have a master's in applied sports psychology from WIT, former basketball international coach down there, Jerry Fitzpatrick. I call him the guru. It was fascinating for 2 years learning from him. My interest in applied sports psychology would have begun. I did a coaching course and I was introduced to a book, Successful Coaching, and within that book, in the references was Sports Psych for Coaches. Bought it, read it, an American book, and then just suddenly decided to do a certificate course in Dublin on sports psychology. I have never done a degree course. I do things in reverse. Attempted to do a business degree after having had a successful business, and that doesn't work. You know too much. So I'm continuous learner basically. So I love my sports psych. I'm continuously reading. My wife kills me here from all the books I'm buying, but coaching philosophy would be I want my players to be the best versions of themselves, to become the best versions of themselves. I'm coaching and developing the person first, the athlete second. I feel if I can develop a well-rounded person, the well-rounded athlete will follow naturally. I want my sessions to be positive, have fun. I want kids to have a lasting experience, but more so I want to help them in their personal development, in their physical, psych and social context.
That's such a rich landscape there, and an entrepreneur, a businessman, coaching on the side, and it's for 30 years, and being involved with basketball there. Did you play basketball?
I did. I wish I'd known what I know now when I was playing, both from a physical context and a mental context. I played, but I was a stubborn player. I wasn't a coach's. I was a coach's nightmare. I was very opinionated. I did play. I played up to county level. I should have played at national level, but I just didn't make that step. Maybe because of my height, I'm only 5'9". So it doesn't help.
What's interesting to me there is you say I was a coach's nightmare. I was very opinionated. Do you Do you think that's a coach's nightmare? I mean, if you get an opinionated player who now, how do you cope with that?
I don't think it's a bad thing. No,
Yeah.
at that time I did.
Okay.
I want my players to express themselves. I'm big into developing their confidence.
Yep.
So I want them to tell me if they're happy doing things. I don't like having to try and pull it out of them, but if I have to, I will. But I'd like them to be I'd like them to be opinionated. Very much so. Very much so.
It's interesting. You come from a business world where the bottom line is everything. Outcomes are everything. Coaching sport, obviously, the level that you're coaching at will mediate how influential the outcome is. But have you always, you mentioned there in your introduction that you put people first, the person first before the athlete, the person, then the player, then the performer, if you like. Have you always been that way as a coach? Is that a philosophy that you've always had, or is that emerged over time?
Emerged over time, and I think I coached up to 1996, 97. I began in 1986. And I took a step out of the game to focus on my business. And I think when I came back into the game, I came back in just after 2000. I came back in with a different pair of glasses on. So I was able to see things from a different perspective, and I opened my mind to learning new things, and that helped. That helped enormously.
What changed? What changed, Aaron? If you don't mind me asking, was there anything that changed in your business that made you change your view? You changed your lens, that you say, your viewpoint on coaching effectiveness.
Business grew. I ended up employing a lot more people, so therefore I had to manage people more. Whereas up to that point, it was a one-man operation. So I ended up with like 10, 11 employees at one stage. So I was continuously having to manage those people. But having to manage them, then I became more aware. I became more self-aware of my own feelings and my emotions, but other people's feelings and emotions as well. So that fed, when I returned to coaching, that fed into the coaching aspect. And then I also saw that, look, I use a term called, like analogy, a pint of Guinness. I don't drink, but the black stuff, the drink, is actually like the average to good athletes, and the cream is the great athletes, the elite athletes. And that cream is made, the difference between the black stuff and the cream is actually mental. It's the mental side of the game. And if you can understand people and get on with them and improve their mental skills, I firmly believe, both in a work context and in a sporting context, you're going to get results. Now, we don't focus on the outcome, Dan. I've never mentioned the word win or lose to my players. I've coached them for 3 years at under 11, and then I left, and I came back at under 15 and under 16. And in those 3 years, I have never, ever mentioned the word win or lose to them.
Interesting.
We mention what's important now. WIN is what? W, full stop, I, full stop, N, full stop. Focusing on the process.
Focusing on what's important. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm still getting over the analogy using a pint of Guinness. I love it. I've never seen the difference between a recreational competitive player as the black stuff, and then the cream at the top as the elite competitor. I love it. I really like that analogy. And what I heard you say, and I don't want to brush over this because I think it's really, really important, is that you said from your work, from your work in the business world, you developed your self-awareness skills from employing others, but you also developed your empathy, your ability to climb into the minds, the bodies of your employees and see the world through their eyes, and subsequently understand that your communication your listening skills were important and impacting your people. The tasks you set them, I guess, was impacting your people. And so empathy seemed like a key skill that actually was a driver in changing the way you coach.
Definitely. Like the important thing in coaching is understanding where your players are coming from. Understanding they may come to training with baggage, but I have one parent that keeps telling me he loves when kids come in the door with a smile, or even if they don't come in the door with a smile, but they're certainly leaving with a smile. And like, I don't care who I'm coaching, but once they're leaving with a smile, I'm happy. But to do that, I need to understand them. I need to understand where they're coming from. I need to understand the person. I'm spending a lot of time. I've spent a lot of time in the summer, based on feedback, and I will be spending a lot of time going forward on feedback and communication. So, in respect, like communication, in respect of body language, like I've got permission to videotape my sessions from my parents for the last number of years, 2 years, but more so from my perspective, my body language. So I record myself in games and training sessions. Am I listening? So I'm building my own self-awareness so I can help with my behaviour, and through that I can understand my own players. If you get my meaning.
100%. I think coaches can be so scared of doing that because they feel that they're giving away power or control. What's your thoughts on that, Aaron? This notion of, if I'm asking players and parents about if you're asking your players or parents about your coaching, do you feel like you're giving away power? Do you feel that it disempowers you to be an impactful coach?
Initially, it was daunting. It's like, I look at it from, when you were asking that question, I was thinking of two things. I was thinking of, okay, feedback from parents, feedback from players, and then I was thinking of the feedback I get from myself, listening to myself being recorded and listening to myself on video, or watching myself on video. It's like we don't like listening to ourselves, our own voices, and we don't like watching ourselves on TV, but it was daunting to begin with. But you have to look at the overall goal and the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, in a sense. Hey, it's not a dream. It's something that if I can bear with this, if I can take the little bit of pain and make the adjustments, I'm there to coach them. I read something recently where you're a coach is a servant. You're a servant to your player. A leader is a servant to your people. I think it was the $1 Trillion Coach, the book about Bill Campbell, former NFL coach, and I think he would end up being advisors to the Google CEOs, and among others. But you're a servant. You're a servant to your people. So I'm a servant to my players. Obviously, then secondary to the parents, but I report to the parents. But it's to get feedback from them. They're watching, they're seeing. I'm seeing on video. I'm hearing my voice. But they're the people that are at the receiving end. So they need to know, or they have a better they have a better understanding, or a better. They're feeling it. They're at the receiving end. I suppose that's in a nutshell. They're feeling it. So it was the best thing to do, is to go and get feedback from them. Like at the end of the season, we actually had a meeting with our players, and we sat them down and they filled out little questionnaires, and then I let the floor open to them, and they came up with suggestions and they had feedback for us, and we're implementing that feedback. And they're 16 years of age.
What I hear you say is they're experiencing your coaching, so they're in a prime position to be the judge of
jury
yeah. of your coaching. And I kind of feel as you're speaking there, I'm thinking of the word negotiation. I'm thinking of actually this isn't disempowering, it's empowering your players to help you be the best coach that you can be, and actually start a negotiation to create a curriculum that's going to be an impactful curriculum for them as individuals, and for you it gives you the platform to also be able to get across the things you want to get across.
Yeah.
You want to be able to deliver, you want to be able to coach,
Mm.
but in a style in a manner in which they're going to enjoy, and it's conducive to what they want, how they want to go about things.
Yeah, from a sports side point of view, doesn't it all come back to like the self-determination theory and motivation, and giving them a bit of autonomy and a bit of an input and a little bit and some control into what's happening on the court, what's happening off the court, and how things are organised. Would you agree?
100%. 100%. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, funnily enough, we met at this conference in Ireland, and I remember answering a question around that, and that tension between autonomy, supportive coaching, and controlled coaching. And it's not saying that there's not going to be any controlled coaching, that the coach isn't going to be to get him in amongst the players and instruct, or it doesn't have any requirements, because of course you do as a coach. However, actually providing an autonomy supportive environment whereby players can set certain behaviours and set the boundaries and are involved with the coaching process, that actually helps them become better learners, that actually helps them engage in the session, that actually drives more consistent performances, if that's what you're looking for.
Yes. Like to have an input, we come back to the word understanding again. They need to understand the why, the what, and the what. I tend to let them figure out the how themselves from time to time. Like we had a session last night on fast breaks, and for an hour and a half I just set them into motion and just gave them guidelines, and let it flow. Let's see what happens. Let's see what develops. And it transpired in Team A versus Team B, and Team A were coaching one way and Team B were coaching another way, and they come up with little plans on how to beat each other. So you're giving them the why. They need to understand why they're doing something.
So that's the principle of play.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm giving them the understanding. They need to know why they're doing something. I'll never do something, or I'll never put them into an activity. I hate the word drills. I'll never put them into an activity and not explain to them why we're doing it. I might say, okay, look, we're going to work on fast breaks here. Let's see what happens. I give them some guidelines, maybe some rules of a game we're going to play, and let it develop, and then stop, ask them questions again. Or I might ask them questions as little, just throw little questions in there, and then have them go off in their teams and decide, have chats amongst themselves. Now we're big into reflection. We are hugely into reflection, where the girls have journals. They take journals home with them and they answer 4 questions. What was our goals today? What went well, what didn't go well, and how can I improve on it going forward? But we ask the same questions on the court when they're coaching themselves. How can we make this better? How can we? Or what do you think we could improve on? You know, so it's developing a growth mindset too, Dan. So it's getting them thinking that, hey, we're not there yet. We can continuously improve, but giving them an input into it. That's the big thing.
Just honing in on those questions you're asking on court. Are you doing anything as a coach to improve participation with regard to answering those questions? How do you work that? Because I think quite often when one pictures that, you picture the extroverts of the group, or the ones who are less neurotic, if you like, who are more confident within a group setting, being the ones who answer the questions, and that's it. Is there anything you do to manage that process?
Well, in the first context, what I would do is if I'm asking questions, I'll seek more than one answer. So I tend to move around the team. Secondly, from time to time, I appoint leaders. I'll appoint leaders. Last night, for example, we had a couple of new kids join the team, and one for me. We've a couple of players training from a younger age group, and they were tending not to get involved in the conversation amongst themselves. So team A have a little time out and they talk. What could we improve on here? And I watched from a distance and I said, not getting involved. So I went over to her eventually when the team had kind of broken up before they went back out on court. I said, look, don't be afraid. You could have a good answer, you could have a bad answer. Makes no difference here. Just say what you feel. Say what you feel. It's the same. I have the same approach with mistakes. I encourage mistakes. I think in one of your previous podcasts, might have been last week or the week before, somebody mentioned John Wooden, famous American coach. And two things stick in my head about him. And the first one is if you're not making mistakes, you're not improving. So you're not outside your comfort zone. You're playing safe. Probably one thing that annoys me when I am coaching is players that won't try because they don't want to make a mistake. I said, make the mistake. I want to see you try. I want to see you try something different. And the second one was his definition of success is the satisfaction of knowing that you did the best to become the best you could become. Didn't mention the word win not once. So both of those, probably gone off tangent a bit, but both of those quotes stick in my mind big time, and that influences my coaching.
Certainly not off tangent, and I think listening to you, I'm always having conversations with coaches that I'm working with around that social piece, that social participation piece, and the anxiety it can cause young players, and finding tools, communication tools, to help promote an environment of inclusivity, to help young people who might be more introverted or, as I say, have greater anxiety around social participation, to help include them within that session.
I coach. One thing I hadn't mentioned is at the moment I teach as part of the junior cert cycle here in Ireland. Mental well-being has come to the fore, and I had the opportunity through my previous school in Cork of teaching mindfulness and mental well-being every week. I travel 288 kilometres. Last year was for one class and this year is for two classes, but I love doing it. It's payback. I just love doing it. But the one thing I learned from teaching and a lot from reading as well was little skills, and I'm developing. I'm learning. I'm learning how to teach and learning how to coach, and they're very related. Would be you mentioned inclusivity, so I would break them up into little groups and maybe pair them off. That's one thing. I pair them off, and they share ideas. They tend to pair off with friends. That's okay. That's fine. And that would be one. And the second thing, being a Corkman, we tend to jump in and we're very opinionated. So I have had to kind of step back. At times I'm still learning to do and let that silence happen. So when I ask a question, let the silence happen and wait for somebody to say something. And if I have to, then maybe give a prompt and see what develops. So eventually somebody will say something. What I am learning is that I'm developing people to develop players, but I'm actually my team. They're going to be some decent coaches coming out of that team because they're well in tuned. They're really tuned into what they're learning.
Listening to you, I hear leadership, I hear teamship and togetherness, relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that this is where coaches perhaps have a missing piece at times. Is that they, you've mentioned a principle of play, And you said, look, absolutely, I'm coaching a principle of play, and absolutely I will set some tasks and I will guide. There will be an element of controlled coaching here, because there has to be, because there are topics that I want players to learn. And you said I want them to understand why they're doing that, so that will be on your communication. But you've also said that I'm teaching leadership, and I'm teaching togetherness, and I'm teaching teamship and relationship, and we'll come on to mental skills, but that as well. So all of these soft skills are being taught are being developed whilst coaching a principle of play.
Yes, it's probably being said about me, but that my training sessions are cognitively challenging. They're physically challenging, but not as physically challenging as most coaches. But we're cognitively challenging them. We don't run sprints. Everything's with a ball. Everything is kind of game orientated. Everything is done with. If I want to do fitness, I'll do it with a ball. We don't do press ups. No, they had a strength and conditioning coach in last year, and he came in for 2 or 3 sessions, and then they went off and did their own thing. But it's cognitively challenging them, getting them to think. I'm developing them as people. My wife has got a big job in some tech company, and I won't advertise it, but she's actually doing a leadership talk with them soon. She's got a top position in her company, in an international company, and she's coming in and she's going to have a little bit of a leadership talk with them. What coaches do that? But I love doing that because I love to see them develop. I give them books then. We hand out books to them, like books on, for example, John Gordon books, and The Energy Bus, and Training Camp, and little things like that. And so where they get little messages, they can take little messages home. I don't ask them for a synopsis of it afterwards, or a summary of it. I said, did you enjoy that? Yeah. Give me one point that you liked about it. That's it then. So it's developing them as people first.
Character development.
Yes, big time. Like we talk, like we'll talk later about the mental skills, but like developing them as people. What we've done with them is that the stuff I'm doing with them in training actually has in basketball has actually carried forward to their academics. Like they went into exams. Half of my team did exams last year, state exams last year. Half of them did state exams this year. And they actually carried a lot of the preparation, a lot of the stuff that I'd done with them. They actually carried it forward into their exams. They were able to use it. I had a kid this morning told me that I wouldn't have got my results. I wouldn't have got what I got, but for the fact that you had prepared, you'd given me tools, which is cool. That's the buzz I get, not the basketball. I get the buzz from things like that.
But they still get better at basketball.
Yes. Like we've played, I don't count wins and losses, but if I was to, we played over 50 games in the last 2 years, and we've won 45.
Which brings me neatly onto my question about winning and not talking about winning.
Yeah.
And before you brought up that stat, I was going to not play devil's advocate, because clearly people will know I'm not going to buy into what I'm about to say, but surely, I suppose some coaches might say, yeah, but Aaron, if you don't mention this word win, how do players learn how to win? Surely you've got to be talking about winning all the time. What's your response to that?
Like, I suppose, won't they have enough of that when they get older? Isn't that age group, isn't it about fun? About enjoyment? No, fun you don't have to have a laugh, but fun to me is like, just Amanda Visick had 89 characteristics of fun, and she broke it down into 11 dimensions, or 11 determinants. But fun, and some of them were the ability to learn and improve. Like all I'm asking of players when they go on court is that you just do your best. So we have this analogy that I use, and it's something that I came up with myself. It's when we train, we bring a blank canvas to training with us. when you learn a skill, or if you do something and you become pretty competent in it, you're drawing on that canvas. When you go to a game, now this is where I differ from other coaches, when you go to play in a competition or a game, you're bringing that canvas with you, Dan, and you're putting it on exhibition. I'm not asking for any more, but I will not accept any less. In other words, like you must try, okay? You must put in the effort. But what I'm doing in that respect is, and it was my assistant coach brought it home to me recently. He said, "You're taking the pressure out of the situation." Like by saying, "Look, all I need you to do is just do what you've been doing in training. That's all." Like one of the kids said to me this morning. She said, when we play, she said, when we go on court, the battle, this is the quotation that she gave me, the battle is won before it's even fought. And she said, we feel that we have an edge, a mental edge, because we've prepared. Now, I don't focus on the opposition. I focus on our own game. So both mentally and physically. We don't tactically focus on the opposition in training. We just do our own thing. We just look to improve physically, mentally, technically, and like we'll work on our defense tactically and whatever. But we're not focusing on the opposition. We just go to play our game. And like she said, what she also said is that they feel that they're able to. They feel much more concentrated and able to focus. But doesn't that come from the fact that they have less pressure on themselves?
There seems to be two strands here with regard to winning scenario. Strand one, as you've mentioned, and I suppose, and I'll get you to come back at me here, but I suppose is more applicable to the under-12s that you coach, which is, well, at that age, why is participating in sport synonymous with winning? Can't it just be participating in sport, having fun as an individual and as a teammate, building relationships, enjoying running around, enjoying physical participation? And then I think what I hear you say is maybe, to a degree the 12s, but definitely under 17s, where maybe the outcome, the score, feels a bit more relevant. Actually, taking players' minds away from winning and losing, away from outcome, and more onto that old cliche of process or the tasks or the things that we've just been doing in training, actually turns down the volume of pressure.
Exactly.
Is that sort of the whole spectrum of what you're saying there? Perfectly.
Like I had a situation recently where I had a player last year in a game, tight game. It was a tight game. Like she stopped. She was running up the court and she was looking at the scoreboard. So I actually subbed her out. And I said, "You're looking at the scoreboard. What were you doing?" "Oh, I'm looking at the scoreboard." "But why? What's wrong?" "Oh, the game is close." I said, "Don't worry about it. You've just taken your concentration off the game. You can't focus on two things at once. So you're focusing on the scoreboard and you just let things go by you on the court. So go back out there now and focus on the game. Focus on the process. Focus on what you're doing. Take that canvas and what you've done. You focus on what's important now. What you did in training, bring it to the game, nothing else, not expecting any more." So I suppose the word was psychological safety. I have a psychological safety net for them. Like we encourage mistakes in training. We want them to try. We want them to play outside their comfort zone in training. We use a lot of simulation in training. So they're put into situations. No, it's not a labour camp. They're put into situations where they're enjoying the game. They're mentally challenged. They're physically challenged, but not as much as other teams. But they're still fit. But by being that, they're much more prepared and much more composed when they go on the court, because they don't have the pressure and they feel as though they're prepared. They feel as though they have that edge.
Well, let's move on to mental skills, because I think this is really interesting. I think this is an interesting conversation because you've mentioned mental skills and you've mentioned not using the word winning and being much more into process. So you've alluded to mental skills already. and I know that's the conversation we had when we first met, and why I was really passionate to get you on the Sports Psych show. But also what you've mentioned there, certainly in the last few minutes, I mean, psychological safety and essentially creating the environment whereby players, it feels like there's less pressure on players. But I think that here's the interesting thing, because I hear a lot. I hear it a lot on podcasts, other podcasts, and I hear it a lot from coaches who say, well, I set up the environment whereby players don't mind making mistakes. You know, I tell them it's okay to make mistakes. And I'm like, great, fine, awesome, brilliant, fantastic. But, you know, we can set up that environment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden that player within his or her own brain and his or her own nervous system suddenly accepts that they themselves can make mistakes. Just because the environment allows it doesn't mean that they will accept that. Just because the environment says don't focus on winning doesn't mean that they're not going to focus on the score or winning. As you just said there with your young player who looked at the scoreboard. Now, you took positive action in that moment, and you did what a lot of coaches wouldn't necessarily, or you saw what a lot of coaches wouldn't necessarily see, which is a player looking at the scoreboard. So that's fantastic. But this is where I feel, it'd be interesting to get your comment, this is where I feel mental skills are very important, because we can set up these environments, and please don't get me wrong, that is so important. That's an enormous skill in itself, to create that environment, create that culture of psychological safety. However, for me, players as individuals and as a collective still need tangible mental skills that help them manage their own personal challenges, essentially, out on court. What's your thoughts
Correct.
on that? And then we can...
Correct. So I totally agree about the environment, setting up an environment that's suitable, that's safe. But the point I would probably make, and something I wrote down here was knowledge of players. You mentioned the word individual, and I've highlighted that. It's the knowledge of each individual. So many coaches go in and they label a team at a certain level, but within that team there are different individuals at different levels, physically, tactically, technically, and mentally. So they're bringing different baggage or different skills or lack of skills with them. So the hardest part for me is as a team trying to set an environment that's safe and let's say technically and tactically safe, and physically not so much, but technically and tactically more so. That's safe, but that's bringing everybody on board and getting everybody on the same boat. Yep. So it's knowing these players, knowing what their capabilities are, knowing what the gaps are from a physical, technical, tactical, and mental perspective, and using my knowledge, whatever knowledge I have, or bringing somebody in to do things that will actually fill those gaps. And it could come down to, it may not, and I have done it, it may not come down to just doing it as a team. It might actually be taking players individually out and walking them separately away, not necessarily in the same training session, but walking with them separately. Maybe on mental skills or on technical skills. The physical skills they work with a strength and conditioning coach, but because while I look fit, my knowledge doesn't stretch that far yet. It's knowledge of players, it's knowledge of individual players, and then tailoring your coaching and what you're giving them, what you're offering to suit each player.
Well, I love what you said there, and I know that. For you specifically, you've done a master's degree in sports psychology, which gives you a good grounding in helping players develop mental skills. So what kinds of things have you done with your players from a mental skills perspective? I think that would be a really interesting conversation. Okay.
So what I'll start with is probably just a little bit off tangent, is we've identified a team. We have a team identity.
Okay.
And our team identity, when most teams go into a huddle, they'll shout the club name or the team name. We don't. We shout, bring it on. In other words, we've done it. Come on, come. We'll take whatever you have to throw at us. That comes from the work we've been doing with them, but it gives that strong approach. Secondly, we don't just put our hands in, we put our fists in. Now, we talked last week, or when we met, about where I got it from. It was Coach K, Coach Mike Krzyzewski and Duke, both using a fist analogy and 5 fingers and what the 5 fingers stand for.
Well, tell us that, because I love this, yeah.
Yeah, so the thumb, right? We encourage each other, okay? The index finger, we're always looking forward, we're always pointing forward, we're always moving forward, we're always looking to improve.
Yep.
The middle finger, we respect each other and others.
Yep.
We don't disrespect referees, we don't disrespect the other team, we don't disrespect our own players. The wedding finger, ring finger, we're committed and loyal to each other. And the small finger, we can't do it alone, we're vulnerable alone. So when we stick our hands in, they know what it means. Like we have a purple chart that shows a picture of a fist, a nice little drawing from me, with little colour nails, and then above it has an open hand. And the open hand actually has a description of each of those fingers. And what we do then is, leading on to the next thing, we did goal setting exercises with them. A couple of exercises. If you had an end of season ball, what would your opposing coaches say about you as a team? What would your opposing players say about you as a team? What would your coach say about you as a team? And then in 12 months' time, what would you like them to say about you? So we're looking at now and in future, and now we've identified any gaps that they like. What would they like? We've broken it down then into individuals. So we say, if your shoes could talk, what would they say about you as a person and as a player, as a teammate? Simple little things. I won't say we're dumbing it down, but we are making this, we're simplifying it. I'm not going into the science with it. I'm just simplifying it for them. And what we've done basically is they identified, looking at it here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 items that were key to them. Like you had confident but not complacent. They want to work on a fast break. They want to be mentally stronger. They want to be physically stronger because they found that they weren't physically stronger. This was at under 15 level. So we went and got a strength and conditioning coach with them. They want better decision making, so the amount of drills or activities we're doing to involve decision making, make those decisions and open them up to opportunities, afford them opportunities to actually make decisions on court. They want to be more aggressive, and then we had they want to be consistent. So then we had little things like free throws, and we have words like heebie-jeebies. So when we go on the court, I'll say, heebie-jeebies, heebie-jeebies. And they know we want to frighten the bejesus out of the opposition. We want to be aggressive on defense, and they understand that. So little and big one, team togetherness. Actually, and the feedback I got from some of the players, actually a lot of the players, was they have been able to do these mental skills in training has actually improved their team togetherness because they look forward to it. At the end or at the start of the training sessions, we're doing this now, we're doing our breathing now tonight, and then we're going to do, let's say, we might do yoga or we might do some concentration drills. Oh, okay, brilliant, super. And then I would provide, let's see, with headphones on, would provide audio. I would provide audio sessions for them, and they can do them anytime they want, like little halls of fame and stuff like that, So we started with our Bring It On, our team identity. We had our values, and then I started basic with them. I started with breathing awareness, being able to relax. We did some centering with them. We took it forward to PMR, progressive muscular relaxation. I did a special relaxing place with them, and I've had a trigger. We use a trigger, so much so that I had one player in a final 2 years ago was losing it a little bit, and I just shouted out her name, and I gave the trigger, and saw her doing it, and boom, calmed down, and got back on track again. You know, so it was something actually that you spoke about recently, and something I'm going to introduce, and it ties in with body language. I talk a lot about their body language and how the image you portray on court, mm-hmm. you want that to be strong. Like mm-hmm. tall players tend to slouch. They tend to slouch and make themselves smaller. Yep. So we're aware of, get them to be aware of their body language. But you spoke about game face, and that rang a bell with me. And I said, this is my next project. You know. So I actually spoke with a different player from a different sport actually during the week about it, and he was like, hey, this might work for me. So I can thank you for that. Their communication. So we had the non-verbal communication, their body language. We had their communication. So girls, for example, I'll give you a little story. So girls don't talk on court. They talk off the court. Okay. So we had situations where they would come on the court and they would do their warm-up routine, and there was not a murmur from them, not even a chat. So what I did was I got them to, when they were doing dynamic stretching, I got them to actually shout 1, 2, 3. And it had such an effect on our first game of the season. We happened to be playing our main opposition in the first game of the season, and we were stretching from the baseline to the halfway line in a full line. There were 13 or 14 of our players there, and they were shouting 1, 2, and 3. The other coach ran from the bench, ran down to our team, in a panic, because her team were like, what is happening here? They're normally not like this. And got them to do the same thing. So I walked up to my players casually with a big smile on my face and said, why am I smiling? And they said, they panicked. So we had that edge there straight away.
Absolutely.
You know? Simple little things like that. You keep it simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. We do a little exercise for confidence in respect of what do you need to be, as a player, to be confident going on the court? What do you need to be confident going on the court? It might be I need to have a good shot, or I need to have good feedback from my coach, or I need to have supportive teammates. So then we work on that. What's more? So they might come up with five items. Rank them. What's more important for you at the moment? Where do you get that from? How could you improve that? And what's your current level on that? Where are you rated at the moment? And then we'll work on it with them. We do a little exercise called "I have you on my back." So a little A4 page, stick it to the person's back, and your teammates go around and they write little comments about you. And those players take it home and they, hey, look what somebody said something about me. No, I loved it because they were saying nice things about me anyway too, which was cool, you know. So simple little things like that, just simple little things like that make a difference, that help them and improve and develop as people, and then players follow.
Well, it helps them stay task focused, and it helps them optimize their ability to function, in the moment, in that task or on that task. And I think there's so much rich material there that I know that the Sports Psych Show audience are going to lap up. But reflecting back to you, what I've heard, I mean, the very beginning of your descriptions there, I heard, the use of imagery and the use of language and the use of embodiment, and that's, as you said, what I spoke about in Ireland last week, how the body impacts the mind, and the use of game face, and that name is a bit of a misnomer in many respects, because game face is so much to do with how the body is moving and functioning, and how that impacts the brain. But what I also hear, if I was to sum up as a whole, what I hear from you is, yes, we have our principles of play, but I'm going to empower players to be involved in learning those principles of play. I'm going to set up a psychologically informed environment. There's going to be psychological safety. We're going to respect the fact that we know that everything we say and everything we do impacts others. I hear togetherness, as I've said, and leadership and teamship, relationship. I hear mental skills, as you said, and including the somatic stuff such as breathing and progressive muscle relaxation, which not every coach would want to get into, but more power to you for doing those. Character development. So there's a real rich landscape there of holistic coaching, and I think it's great, and that helps for me. I hear you talk about putting the person first. I hear participation, I hear progression, and I hear performance as well. All three, within a melting pot of a range of skills.
Correct. Yeah. You're giving me a big head on, Dan.
No, it's great. It's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
yeah,
And look, I suppose my last question, I think this has been a fantastic conversation, is I was thinking there, what can Aaron improve? What do you as a coach feel that you can improve upon? And obviously you can say everything, but maybe give us a specific thing that you'd like to get better at and how you're going to do that.
Well, from a sports psych perspective, probably my communication. When I had my business, I was speaking with people on a daily basis. When I sold my business, I became more of a loner. No, I'm married and I have friends, but my communication skills, I lack a bit of confidence myself, so I am aware. I'm working on my communication and how I give feedback. So I'm constantly on the lookout for my behaviour, watching how I communicate with people, how I give feedback. From a coaching perspective, and always wanting to learn, that's the reason why I'm taking up the master's course in applied coaching. Or coaching would be to improve the way I coach, maybe the structure of the sessions. I'll probably offer things to the course, and I'll probably take a lot more home with me. But it's a constant improvement. It's a constant improvement. If I'm not learning, I'm doing nothing. I have to learn. I need to learn. I'm constantly learning.
Absolutely, well said. And I know from listening to you there, I know a lot of the Sports Psych Show listeners will be keen to learn more from you, and I know you'd like to learn from them. So, how can people get in touch or follow you? Do you use social media, and how can they get in touch if you'd like them to?
Yeah, I have. I use Twitter, so it's at 27 O'Connell. Capital O, small c, Onnell. So it's at 27 Oconnell, and the first O is a capital O.
At 27 O'Connell.
Yes.
Brilliant. Perfect. Well, look, thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on the Sports Psych Show and talking about your experiences. I think it's been inspiring. It's brilliant stuff.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Wow, you really enjoyed it, and I certainly enjoyed that podcast. And I'd love to hear what you, the listener, thinks. So please do get in touch via Twitter or Facebook or through my website, danabrahams.com, to tell me what you think about the show. And if you do have any suggestions for future guests or different formats, I'd be delighted to hear them. I'm really looking forward to next week's episode. Bye for now.